My sister stole my identity, emptied my bank accounts, and then had the audacity to demand my inheritance. I'm still reeling from everything that's happened, and I honestly don't know where to begin. This is a long one, and I apologize in advance for any rambling, but I need to get this out, and I desperately need some advice. I'm a 32-year-old woman, and I have an older sister, Sarah, who is 35. Growing up, our relationship was complicated. She was always the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. She was effortlessly beautiful, popular, and academically brilliant. I, on the other hand, was the quiet, artistic one, always a little in her shadow. I loved her, of course, but there was always this undercurrent of resentment, a feeling that no matter what I did, I would never be enough for our parents. They always made excuses for her behavior, no matter how egregious, and minimized my accomplishments. It created a dynamic where I constantly sought their approval, which Sarah seemed to effortlessly command. This favoritism manifested in countless ways throughout our childhood. If I got a good grade, it was expected. If Sarah did, it was celebrated with a family dinner and lavish praise. If I made a mistake, I was lectured and grounded. If Sarah messed up, it was just a phase or she didn't mean it. I remember one time, when I was about 10 and she was 13, I had saved up all my allowance for months to buy a specific art set I'd been dreaming of. It was expensive, and I was so proud when I finally had enough. I hid it in my closet, planning to surprise our parents with a new painting. A few days later, I went to get it, and it was gone. I confronted Sarah, who casually admitted she'd borrowed it to use for a school project and had given it to a friend when she was done. When I burst into tears and told our parents, they simply told me to share and that Sarah needed it more for school. They never made her replace it or even apologize. It taught me a bitter lesson about my perceived value within the family. As we got older, the dynamic shifted slightly, but the underlying favoritism remained. Sarah continued to be the darling, and I continued to be the somewhat overlooked but reliable one. I went to a state university, worked hard, and got a good job in graphic design. Sarah went to a prestigious out-of-state university, dropped out after 2 years, and then bounced from one failed venture to another, always relying on our parents to bail her out. She never held a stable job for long, often complaining about her bosses, her colleagues, or the general injustice of the working world. Our parents, of course, always sympathized with her, footing the bill for her rent, her car payments, and her extravagant lifestyle. While I was expected to be financially independent, despite all this, I tried to maintain a relationship with her. She was, after all, my sister. We had moments of genuine connection, fleeting as they were, where I'd glimpse the sister I wished I had, the one who wasn't constantly seeking attention or putting me down. But those moments were rare. More often, our interactions were laced with her thinly veiled envy or outright contempt, especially if I shared any good news about my life or career. If I got a promotion, she'd subtly belittle my job. If I went on a nice vacation, she'd point out how much more expensive her last trip was. It was exhausting. About a year ago, my grandmother, my mother's mother, passed away. She was a wonderful woman, and we were very close. She was one of the few people in my family who always treated Sarah and me equally, encouraging my artistic pursuits and celebrating my successes without reservation. I loved her dearly. In her will, she left a substantial inheritance to be divided equally between Sarah and me. It wasn't a life-changing amount, but it was enough to make a significant difference, enough for a down payment on a small house or to invest for my future. I was incredibly grateful. My grandmother had always been a smart investor, and her foresight meant that her legacy would provide a cushion for both of us. When the will was read, Sarah was furious. She believed she deserved more, claiming that she was in a more precarious financial situation and therefore had a greater need. Our parents, predictably, sided with her, suggesting that I should do the right thing and give Sarah a larger portion. They said things like, "Sarah needs it more, dear, you're so stable, and it would be a loving gesture, wouldn't it?" I was appalled. This was my grandmother's wish, her legacy, and they were trying to override it to fuel Sarah's entitlement. I politely but firmly refused, explaining that my grandmother's wishes were clear, and I intended to honor them. This caused a rift, with our parents expressing their disappointment in me. Sarah, for her part, stopped speaking to me entirely, though I thought that would be the end of it. I deposited my inheritance into a separate savings account, a high-yield one, and started making plans for my future. I was so excited about the prospect of finally having a place of my own, a tangible step towards the stability I'd always worked for. I kept the account details private, of course, only sharing them with my trusted financial advisor. I didn't even tell my parents, knowing they would just relay the information to Sarah, who would inevitably find a way to make it about herself. Then, about 3 months ago, things started to go wrong, subtly at first. I noticed a few small, unusual transactions on my regular checking account, a subscription I didn't recognize, a small online purchase from a website I'd never visited. I dismissed them as minor errors, maybe a forgotten free trial or a fraudulent microcharge that would be reversed. I contacted my bank, and they investigated, but couldn't find anything conclusive. They suggested I change my passwords, which I did. Then, things escalated. My credit card company called me to flag several large purchases from high-end boutiques and electronic stores in a city several hours away. These were definitely not mine. I immediately froze my credit cards and reported the fraud. The bank began a full investigation, and I was assured that I wouldn't be liable for the fraudulent charges. The whole process was stressful and time-consuming, requiring me to fill out numerous forms and spend hours on the phone. A few weeks later, I received a notice from my utility company saying my account was overdue, despite the fact that I had set up automatic payments. When I checked, my automatic payments had been cancelled, and the billing address changed to a different city. This was beyond concerning. It wasn't just about money anymore. Someone was actively trying to disrupt my life. I spent weeks in a state of growing panic, constantly checking my accounts, changing passwords, and scrutinizing every piece of mail. I installed security software on my computer and changed my email passwords to something incredibly complex. I felt violated and vulnerable. I even considered installing cameras in my apartment, something I never thought I'd do. Then came the truly devastating blow. I logged into my high-yield savings account, the one holding my grandmother's inheritance, and it was empty. Not just a few $1,000s missing, but completely empty. Every single penny was gone. My heart dropped into my stomach. I felt a cold dread wash over me, a feeling of absolute despair. This wasn't just fraud. This was targeted, malicious, and deeply personal. I immediately called the bank, practically hyperventilating. They confirmed that the account had been entered via multiple large transfers to another bank account. When I pressed them for details, they were hesitant, citing privacy regulations. But I insisted, explaining the severity of the situation. Finally, after much back and forth, the representative, sensing my distress, discreetly told me that the transfers had been initiated online, and the account details matched those of a woman named Sarah Miller. My sister, the world tilted. It was like a punch to the gut, but worse, because it was from someone I was supposed to trust. My own sister had stolen my entire inheritance. The initial shock quickly turned into a blinding rage, a fury I had never experienced before. All the years of subtle slights, the favoritism, the dismissals, the resentment, culminated in this single, monstrous act. I called her immediately, my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. She answered, her voice annoyingly cheerful. "Hey, what's up?" she said, as if nothing was amiss. "What's up?" I screamed, my voice cracking. "What's up is you entered my bank account, Sarah. You stole my grandmother's inheritance." There was a beat of silence on the other end, and then a sigh. Not a sigh of remorse, but a sigh of annoyance, as if I was the one being unreasonable. "Oh, that," she said, her voice dropping a little, but still remarkably calm. "Look, I needed it. You know I've been struggling. And honestly, I deserve it more than you do. You're fine. You have a stable job. I don't. Grandma would have wanted me to have it." I couldn't believe my ears. She was actually admitting it, without a shred of guilt, and trying to justify it with the same manipulative rhetoric our parents had always used. She even invoked our grandmother's name, as if she knew what our grandmother would have wanted better than I did, when our grandmother had explicitly stated equal distribution. "You needed it." I repeated, my voice barely a whisper, trembling with suppressed anger. "You needed to steal my identity, change my billing addresses, and take every single penny I had? That money was for my future, Sarah. It was my grandmother's legacy." "It's just money," she scoffed. "And besides, it's not like you were going to do anything important with it. Probably just save it, like you always do." I put it to good use. I finally paid off some of my debts, and I even put a deposit on a new car. You should be happy for me, really. I hung up. I couldn't even form words. The audacity, the sheer lack of empathy, the blatant disregard for my feelings and my financial well-being. It was beyond anything I could have imagined. This wasn't just a lapse in judgment. This was a calculated, malicious act, followed by an unapologetic, self-serving justification that I immediately contacted the police and filed a report. I also went back to the bank with all the information I had, including Sarah's admission. They informed me that because she had accessed my accounts using my personal information, which she must have obtained through some form of identity theft, likely by going through my mail or hacking my online accounts, it was a more complex case than simple fraud. They assured me they would cooperate fully with the police investigation. When our parents found out, their reaction was exactly what I had feared. They called me, not to express shock or sympathy, but to chastise me for overreacting and ruining the family. "You're going to put your sister in jail," my mother wailed. "How could you do this to your own family? She stole everything I had." I yelled back, tears streaming down my face. "She committed a crime. You're defending a thief." "She's struggling, dear," my father said, in that calm, patronizing tone he always used when he was trying to manipulate me. "She just made a mistake. Can't you forgive her? It's just money." Just money. I scoffed. That was my future, my grandmother's gift. And it's not just money when it's stolen. And it wasn't a mistake, it was deliberate. She stole my identity to do it. They tried to convince me to drop the charges, to work it out within the family, to be the bigger person. They even suggested that Sarah could pay me back slowly, a suggestion I knew was a fantasy, as she had never taken responsibility for anything in her life. They blamed me for not being more understanding, for not being more generous, for causing unnecessary drama. They even went so far as to suggest that if I had just given Sarah a larger portion of the inheritance in the first place, none of this would have happened. They essentially blamed me for her criminal actions that I refused. Absolutely refused. I told them that if they couldn't see the severity of what Sarah had done, and couldn't support me, then I didn't want anything to do with them either. It was a painful conversation, filled with accusations and emotional blackmail, but I stood my ground. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to let their favoritism and Sarah's entitlement dictate my actions or my emotional well-being. The police investigation is ongoing. I've provided them with all the evidence, including Sarah's verbal admission. My financial advisor is helping me navigate the complexities of identity theft and recovering my funds, though he warned me it could be a long and arduous process. The emotional toll has been immense. I feel betrayed, violated, and utterly alone. Despite having a few close friends who have been incredibly supportive, I'm living with a constant knot in my stomach, the fear that Sarah might try to retaliate, or that our parents will continue to harass me. I've changed all my locks, secured my online presence as much as possible, and am even considering moving to a new apartment. Just for peace of mind, I'm struggling with the thought of what this means for my family. Can I ever forgive Sarah? Can I ever have a relationship with my parents again, knowing they enabled her and then blamed me? Part of me wants to cut them all off completely, to finally break free from the toxic cycle of favoritism and manipulation. Another part of me, the part that still remembers the rare good moments, the part that yearns for a functional family, feels a deep sadness for what has been lost, and what can never be recovered. I guess I'm looking for advice on several fronts. First, how do I deal with the emotional aftermath of this kind of betrayal? How do I process the anger, the hurt, the sense of violation? Second, am I doing the right thing by pursuing legal action, even though it means potentially putting my sister in jail and alienating my parents further? Is there any scenario where I should reconsider? Third, what steps should I take to protect myself financially and personally moving forward, beyond what I'm already doing? And finally, has anyone else been through something similar with a sibling or family member? How did you navigate it? How did you come out on the other side? I feel like my entire world has been turned upside down, and I don't know who to trust anymore. I just want to feel safe and secure again, and to somehow find a way to heal from this devastating betrayal. Any advice, any perspective, would be deeply appreciated.